We live in a society governed by image, status, and just being too serious sometimes. Like the Joker said, why so serious? It's a huge problem now. A lot of people, due to their upbringing, ideologies, or just basic character traits, can feel they're being too serious about themselves. Now, there's a reason why I made the video title here, how to not be so serious, as opposed to how to not care what other people think. Because at the end of the day, we live with other people. We have to care what other people think. Humans are social animals. But it's to the degree and why you care about other people, I think that's more powerful than actually caring what other people think. Let me take an example for this. You could have a fear of talking to your boss. Now, there could be two reasons for this. One could be you made a mistake and you're taking yourself too seriously. Because you're taking yourself too seriously and you don't want to be made a fool of, you don't want to talk to your boss. Now, I would say that is detrimental. In that case, you're not actually caring you are caring what other people think in a bad way. Now, another way could be, let's say your boss makes some mistakes and it's really not a huge mistake and you just want to help him save face. Let's say it's nothing that big, like he just just a small error, printing error that you can just take action and adjust, or typo that you can adjust yourself. Things like that, I'd say it doesn't really matter, and you could go the route of not caring about his minor mistake. So again, I feel like it's where you come from. And I feel like a lot of our problems, anxieties, depression, comes from us taking ourselves too seriously. And the reason why we take ourselves so seriously is because we have an expectation or an idea of how we should act, think, or what we should do. And when we have those expectations and we fail to meet them, that's when we get things like depression, anxiety, and another trope of psychological health detriments. It's just not good for your brain. For example, if you per se are someone who sees yourself as someone who always is on time, the events and times that you are late, you will start to feel sad, negative. You'll beat yourself up. You're taking yourself too seriously. So how do we stop this? How do we stop being so serious about ourselves, our lives, and live a more free-flowing, fun life? Because when we look around when we go to parties or even outside, is it the person who's walking around with a serious face, like he's ready to attack the world, that looks like he's having fun? Does he look like he's genuinely a person you want to be around? Or is it the guy who's like light, like energy, free-flowing water, just doing whatever he pleases, not in a detrimental way to other people, but in a way that he's fully expressing himself, and that in turn allows others to express themselves around him as well? That's why you have to be able to just let go of these expectations and identities. So let's get straight into it. How do we take ourselves less seriously? How do we have more fun in life and just enjoy the day-to-day without having these negative effects of taking ourselves too seriously? Well, first off, you might have guessed, is to first get rid of expectations of yourself. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, Richie, I can't just get rid of expectations of myself. Then I'm just going to do whatever I want to. I might not come to work early. I might start slacking off, not doing things well. And my life will just be a downhill battle from there. Not necessarily. When I mean get rid of expectations of yourself, I don't mean to destroy your character traits and your values. Those are different. I mean, get rid of these external outcomes that you're putting on yourself. For example, if you have an expectation that you have to be perfect and get A on every homework assignment, that is something that's not in your control. You cannot control whether the teacher gives you an A or not. Sure, you can do everything in your power, but at the end of the day, it's ultimately up to the teacher. That's an example of your expectation being placed in the wrong area. It's placed in something that's outside of your control. That'll lead you to taking yourself too seriously. Because think about it this way: you hand in a homework assignment and you're like, oh, I have to get an A. So you stress out, do all this stuff, but then you get, let's say, A minus. You're gonna, the dissonance between your reality, you didn't get an A, you got an A minus, and your expectation, you should have got an A, that creates that negative effect. So that's why you should not lower your expectations, but learn to not put expectations on things you can't control. That's one of the first problems of someone who takes themselves too seriously. It can also be called narcissism or perfectionism, where you're trying to control what people think about you. You're taking yourself too seriously. For instance, if you want people to think that you're smart, you're gonna try to do everything in your power to not sound stupid. So you might be reserved at parties. You might want to dance, but you don't want to look stupid. So you just sit down and do nothing. Again, you're taking yourself too seriously because you're putting expectations on expectations on external outcomes, things you can't control. So that's the first thing. You got to learn to really manage your expectations and learn, I guess, where you learn to expect more from yourself than what other people think and other outcomes in your life. So that's the first thing. Managing the correct expectations and getting rid of expectations of external outcomes. Trying to control everything. That again leads to my second point. Usually we have expectations. That leads us to trying to control them. So again, let's say we don't want to look stupid. That's our expectation of ourselves. That's our identity. So we will try to control that. At parties, like I said, you might not dance because you don't want to look stupid. In class, you might not know necessarily what the teacher's talking about, but you don't want to ask a question because you don't want to look stupid. And this is you taking yourself too seriously. You're trying to control all these different factors that are not in your control. You're having anxiety in class maybe because you're like, oh, I don't know the answer to this, but I don't want to ask the teacher. I don't want to look stupid. You might have to tell your boss something, but you're like, oh, I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. But in reality, you should be the person to do these things. And even in social settings, you might want to ask this person a more in-depth question about his job or his hobby, but you're just like, oh, I don't want to look stupid. I'll just pretend like I know what he's talking about and just nod my head. And you're just taking yourself too seriously. You're trying to control what the other person's thinking of you. Now the third thing, and this is the underlying root cause of you trying to manage, you having weird expectations and also trying to control the scenario. The third thing is be aware of the identities you're putting on yourself. So who do you think you are? That's important. Who do you think you are? People who take themselves too seriously, they have serious identity problems. I guess that's why they say you're taking yourself too seriously. They have these preconceived notions of who they are and what that means. Again, the example of the person who doesn't want to look stupid, they think that they're a smart person, that they might think that they know everything. So they're trying to have certain expectations and control certain outcomes to maintain this identity. So these are the symptoms of someone who takes themselves too seriously. And I guess I've gone over the symptoms instead of going over the solutions. But I think it's crucial that we are aware of these symptoms before we actually try to solve the issue. Now, so how do we manage this? How do we, stop taking ourselves too seriously, have more fun in our lives, and not have to deal with these negative mental health effects? We could either manage our expectations, try to get rid of our control, and those two things would help. But those things would be only addressing the symptoms. The root cause of it would actually be you, your identity. How you look at yourself is what you expect of yourself and how you want others to treat you as well. So how do we start to change our identity to someone who's not so serious, someone who's not like a know-it-all, perfectionist or a narcissist, and become more fun, free-flowing, and silly? Well, of course, it's not going to happen overnight, But let me just give you some activities or thoughts and ideas that you can hold that'll help you to slowly but surely have a bit more freedom in our lives, because that's why we would do this at all. If being super serious about yourself was awesome, you wouldn't have to do this. So one of the first things that you could do is to, again, be aware of those identities. Do I actually know everything? Does everything I have to do actually have to be perfect? And it's good to analyze and actually to place doubts into these identities that may not be serving us. For example, if you have the identity that you're super cool and that you have to look cool in front of everybody, you might want to start questioning this identity. Like, oh, am I really that cool? You know? You might also want to question, do I have to be cool all the time? Are there any times where I haven't been cool, but it's actually helped me have more fun and enjoy myself more? So start placing some doubts and really think and be aware of your identities and how they're affecting your life. This will actually allow you to give you that strong why to make that change from going from whatever identity that you have to the new identity you want. Next, though, you want to take action. It doesn't have to be too big. It can be small things, and usually what I like to do personally is do the actions by myself before I do them with other people, because social pressure, it's hard to do, change yourself or act a silly way or act outside of your identities in front of other people. It can be stressful. So for instance, let's say you think you're like super smart and you know it all. Why don't you just one day just research and actually, let's say you're into engineering. Let's say you're an engineer. Why don't you actually research and evaluate some of the opposite arguments to whatever you think to be true? So this way you're kind of breaking down your identity of you knowing it all, because you could look at the alternative information that's clashing against your information. This way you're building evidence and you're taking action towards dissolving that identity. So you could look up things that are contrary to what you believe. That'll help you to dissolve that know-it-all belief, because you'll find that maybe that person is right too. If you're if you're trying to be a bit more free and fun, but you're super serious because you think you have to be a cool person, maybe you just dance a little when you're at home. Just dance, do a crazy dance, have some fun, just yell, just just act crazy, just a little bit though. Don't lose your mind. Maybe it is good to lose your mind at that point. And just make this a habit. It is going to take time to dissolve these strong identities you've built for yourself. But if you use these steps of being aware of your identities, questioning the value of the identities, and taking small actions to dissolve them and slowly change them, you'll actually find that you can take on whatever identity that you want to. You could be a super fun person or a super serious person. You could be a little narcissistic, and maybe that might help you sometimes. And you can sometimes be a little bit unselfish and choose to look, maybe not so highly of yourself sometimes. Once you start doing this exercise of being aware of your identity, taking action to dissolve them, you'll find that who you are has nothing to do with identities, but it has to do with just you. And that you are, as a human being, a malleable person that can have the freedom and fun to choose whatever identities you can choose to whatever benefit or circumstance that you're in currently. That's all I have to say for this video. Again, if you're having a problem taking yourself so seriously, sometimes you just need to breathe, calm down, enjoy life. As always, have a great day and live the life you want to live.